Oh, then I'll turn the time over to Commissioner Dunn.
I'll be happy to act as staff. Commission, we have a process where we will hopefully be able to finish a code of ethics. And I'd like to thank staff and certainly this commission for all your efforts. This has taken longer than I ever dreamt it would take, but it's been very beneficial. 3 workshops, the last having the full involvement of this commission, and I asked for amendments, and boy, did you guys deliver. We we have 13 amendments to consider on this. What I would suggest, and I discussed this with the chairman, that we just walk through the code of ethics as it reads and deal with the proposed amendments in order that the code presents them, so that I'm not playing favorites to anyone in terms of how soon you got your amendment in or things of that sort, so we can be consistent. There's a couple of rules that we have more than one amendment, so it'll be a good opportunity to have a discussion as to the differences of those amendments so we can make a decision that's in the best interest for this commission and for the ratepayers and what we're trying to do. I do feel we're going to end up one way or the other with the most comprehensive code of ethics of any commission in this country, and I think it's something that will serve this commission well. But keep in mind, it's going to be a living document, something that can be amended in the future. So if something doesn't go your way, there's always an opportunity later to see if how it goes in terms of how we operate as a commission. So with that being said, let me make a motion on the code of ethics itself. Would that be appropriate before we proceed? I will make a motion concerning item number 24 for the approval of the Arizona Corporation Commission Code of Ethics. And with that, we have several amendments. And we can start with the amendment on Rule 2.5, which is page, if you want to follow with your master plan, is Rule 2.5 on page 2. And it's a amendment offered by Commissioner Burns. So Commissioner Burns, could you present or discuss that amendment and make a motion? This is the one that's dealing with the additional language for the amendment that deals with the hiring and firing of staff. And the next one will be Rule 2.6, and Commissioner Tobin. With this, I'll just indicate that 2.5 currently reads, Commissioners shall not with corrupt intent use their political influence or position to cause the firing, promotion, or demotion of any commission employee or the hiring or failure to hire any applicant for employment with the commission. That's based on ARS Section 41-753. I will indicate that the use of the language corrupt intent is located in both the Arizona statute, is approved by the legislature, as well as, I believe, the federal code. Is that correct? Corresponding federal code. That's where that language came from. Mr. Burns?
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Commissioner Dunn. I'd like to move Commissioner Burns' proposed amendment number 1. I did receive some information at one point in time during this process with the concern of the ability to actually get a conviction or prove that anybody had corrupt intent. So actually my initial thought was to strike the word corrupt, but not doing that. I think if we at least take the definitions, and the definitions that we've pulled up on this are from the Arizona State Statutes and Black's Law Dictionary, to explain what and make it as clear as possible. I believe the make sure that we do not have a violation.
So that's with the additional language with corrupt, malicious, unscrupulous, unethical, or intimidating intent. Is that correct?
Yes. And then those are defined.
Okay, any comments? Commissioner? No, I appreciate this further definition. I put my legal hat on. I think the problem I see here is that it seems to list so many different adjectives there, especially their or, that I don't know if there'd be it'd be a matter of choosing which one that would fit, and it may actually make the item more confusing than it would be otherwise. Any other comments? Okay. Let's take a voice vote on this amendment number 2. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh, maybe we should let's do a voice vote. We'll call for the voice vote. Roll call. Give me roll call. Have a roll call on this amendment, please. I'll do roll calls from now on, I think.
Commissioner Burns,
Aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner Tobin,
So I'm struggling to hear some of the dialogue. Sound would ever fall off. Is this just the one word? Is this all it is?
There was,
So it just goes, this is just a one-word addition?
no, it's 4 words
And the definition.
and definitions
Oh.
of those words, yeah.
So I did not hear if there, is this in statute? Is that what we're saying?
Yes, well, we've added words that aren't in the proposal, but the definition of the words added and including the word corrupt, we picked up the definitions from the state statutes and the Black's Law Dictionary to
Okay,
make
and
sure it's clear.
there was no objection by anybody?
I just indicated that perhaps it's unique in the sense of adding so many different type of adjectives, but with the word or, I do think you could just pick and choose whatever may fit the alleged bad act, I guess.
All right. You know what? I just think it's overkill. I'm going to vote no. I apologize. I couldn't hear for a minute there, but looks like we already have this taken care of. I vote no.
Commissioner Dunn,
I vote yes.
Chairman Freese,
Yes.
Okay, next amendment is on Rule 2.6 on page 2. Okay, I'm passed 4-1. I apologize. The first time. Okay, with the next amendment on 2.6, that is Rule 2.6, which is on page 3. This is a new rule. It'd be a new Rule 2.6. Let me see if I can find that. Yeah, new Rule 2.6 under Article 2. Commissioner Tobin. If you wish to introduce and explain and move your amendment, if you wish.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I thought I was on Burns number 2 there. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this amendment is it's about more lean administration. So it talks about moving timelines along and due process. And in fact, come to find that the average time between briefs and commission decision been in some cases very, very long. And restitution, water quality issues on the line. And I'm reading from my comments here because I'm getting tired here. by applying the provisions. Should help the address. So here's the point. You know, our current judicial system allows, let me scroll up here, allows for a lean administration, which means you're supposed to get your cases done in a timely manner. And the timely manner is set in that time, which makes, it's Arizona 12-128.01, makes payment of judges' salaries in Superior Court contingent upon their court calendars, clear of any backlog or unresolved issues. So this is already what our judiciary goes through. I think this is just a welcome addition to our process here. You know, we have judicial authority. Everybody, you know, we have all the, we have public policy, we got executive, we got judicial. So maybe we should start adding these things on and start acting like the judiciary. So this allows us to apply money to due process and have real consequences for the commission causing delays. So it's my view that we should adopt this as part of our code of ethics in practice, so that we move our cases through more quickly. So
Any comments from the commission?
I don't know what number it is. What's the number of that?
I'm sorry, it's Burns proposed amendment number 2. I apologize, I've not been.
No, you're on
This is
Tobin.
the Tobin
I'm
amendment
Tobin's
two.
proposal,
Yeah.
number 2.
This is Tobin 2.
Tobin, I'm sorry. Tobin's proposed amendment number 2.
Some questions, Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we're just doing the same thing that we have our judges do now.
Thank you,
Move the
Mr.
process along.
Commissioner Dunn, and thank you, Commissioner Tobin, for the amendment. I think it certainly sounds like a great idea. The question that I have is whether the commissioners feel like that the Code of Ethics is the appropriate place for this effort, or if this would be better suited for a rule. I mean, I do see that it does affect the commissioner's salary, so in that sense, I think that perhaps the Code of Ethics makes sense, but I just wonder if perhaps this might be more appropriate in a rule. I don't know if staff has any insights or comments.
Mr. Chairman, members, I would agree with that. Commissioner Olson, I think it's a good idea, and having come from the civil side of litigation, as many of us on the legal staff have, we're used to that 60-day deadline. However, I am aware that there is, I believe, currently an open docket that Commissioner Dunn is spearheading to look at our procedural rules. So in my view, perhaps it would be better suited to be addressed in that docket versus the Code of Ethics.
Okay, I'll withdraw and we'll move it to that other docket in the safest time.
Yeah, and that'll be something we'll deal with the docket, unless you want to apply the 60 days to the commission for signing orders.
Actually,
Mr. Burns got it.
don't get me started.
Okay, that's fine. Then we don't get paid, right? Okay, well,
I withdraw.
Okay, thank you. Next one will be concerning Rule 3.1, and that is then Commissioner Burns' proposed amendment number 2, involving Rule 3.1. Commissioner Burns.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Dunn. I would move Burns' proposed amendment number 2, and it just adds political party affiliation to the list of categories, I guess, if you will, that should not be taken advantage of.
Any comments from the commission? One question, if I could, Commissioner Burns. Obviously, political party affiliation is not a suspect class, but I guess what I'm a little concerned with is that if this applies to our own employees, when it comes to my staff, I'm a house divided, but there could be an interest. There could be an interest on behalf of a commissioner to employ someone with a similar political party that commissioner is in. If they do so, could that be viewed as a potential violation?
Well, I wouldn't think so. I mean, that would be coming from the positive side as opposed to the negative side.
Well, unless someone on the other party wanted to work for you and you interviewed them and you decided to make your decision based on that one particular fact alone, that could be something that person could use, perhaps alleging that that particular commissioner had acted inappropriately. That's the only place where I could see it could be some of a problem concerning our own staff that we personally hire, if that's a critical item. The other items would certainly apply because they're certainly protected and suspect classes, but political party affiliation may be a little looser.
My 2 cents, I would not be able to support this.
And Commissioner Tobin, if I might, just wanted to point out, I do feel like the last sentence of Rule 3.1 does kind of catch all harassment as far as what I assume Commissioner Burns is trying to get at, or it says commissioners are prohibited from engaging in unlawful harassment in any form, whether verbal, physical, or visual. So, I mean, certainly, if you're harassing someone and it happens to be because they don't belong to the party that you belong to, I wonder if perhaps that line might get at that concern. So I certainly agree that there should not be any harassment for any reason.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, we'll ask for the roll call, please.
Commissioner Burns,
Aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Explaining my vote. Commissioner Tobin.
Yes, please.
Commissioner Dunn.
I'm sorry. Commissioner Olson.
Thank you. Yeah, what I just described. I do feel that the line here does catch all unlawful harassment. I think that certainly as commissioners we should not be harassing anyone for any reason, even if it is that they belong to some organization that we don't belong to, political party, nonprofit organization, whatever it might be. But I do have the concern about commissioners choosing to hire someone that shares their ideology or political party, and that being a basis for a lawsuit simply because of that decision to hire someone that does share that political party. So I don't know.
Commissioner Tobin,
Yeah, I agree with Representative, sorry, Commissioner Olson. I agree with Commissioner Olson, I vote no.
Commissioner Dunn,
I think the intent was certainly there, and I think because of our partisan nature and the hiring of our own staff, this could be a chilling effect or something that would be confused. So I think it would be best without it. So I vote no.
Chairman Freese,
No.
Okay, the amendment fails. Vote of nays have it 4-1. The next two rules are from Commissioner Olson, number 2 and 3. They appear to be dealing with the same general area of provisions on Rule 4.3 and 4.4, and also to some degree Rule 5.3 in terms of disclosure and transparency. Commissioner Olson.
Thank you, Commissioner Dunn. And also, I don't think I've taken the opportunity yet to thank you for the extensive effort that you've put into this process, and I think that you ought to be commended for that effort that you've put into it. I know it was extensive and took a lot of work, so I thank you for that. As far as these amendments, I struggled with trying to craft an amendment that I was comfortable with, because I certainly agree with the statements that are in the Code of Ethics already, that some of these meetings that take place can have public benefit, some public value in attending these meetings and gaining information that can be shared from experts in a variety of fields, as well as networking with our counterparts from across the country and learning what's working in other states, what's not working, so that can be applied here. And so I don't feel that there is, I do feel that there is some public value, but the challenge that I had in trying to come up with an amendment that I felt was absolutely beyond reproach and not subject to abuse, I couldn't establish something other than a bright line test that just says you don't accept any food, any public or any benefit from any organization that's affiliated with the regulated community. And so that's what I landed on. Like I said, I just think that it makes it perfectly clear that there is no ability for abuse and there is no undue influence. The trade-off, like I said, is that perhaps some of these meetings won't be attended that could be a benefit. Certainly, a commissioner could find other ways to attend these meetings using the office budget or some other method that's not funded by an organization that's affiliated with a public service corporation. So that's the perspective behind the two amendments and behind having support of them. Would you like me to move amendment number 2?
Yes, please.
Commissioner Dunn, I move the also proposed amendment number 2 be adopted.
Okay.
Well,
Yes, Commissioner Tobin.
thank you. I have a question. Could you? So where does Commissioner Olson, where's the intervener come in? I mean, we've just gone through this, the solar wars and all that other stuff down there. They're not regulated. So I guess in theory, I mean, that, we can go have lunch or breakfast or dinner or what have you, as long as you're not regulated, it's okay, even though you may be a major intervener, which has preoccupied a lot of this commission for a long time. Where do you draw the line? I mean, is a cup of coffee, land here? I mean, how deep is this thing going to go that we have to be so cautious? I mean, oftentimes, I make sure that I'm always buying or I'm getting separate checks. But I'm just saying we're putting this down in writing, and if we're going to do the cup of coffee isn't allowed, let's make sure that everybody's included. Let's make sure that includes those who are just intervening in cases. Let's make sure that includes those folks who may be a customer of a utility or something who are having a potluck at their house. This is about influence. That's being influential. So I just think we're going way too far on the, we're adults. I think that sometimes this gets just out of control. And I'm just looking back on it, I'm just saying it says, related to matters, shall not solicit or accept food, refreshment, or paid for by a member of the regulated community, or maybe you're at a NARU convention, there's 200 people there, and the utilities bought the coffee for the meeting, and the Danish sat around it, and you're on your way to another meeting, you grab the cup of coffee and off you go. I don't know, it just seems like we're diving so deep into this to make sure that, for heaven's sake, somebody lends you a pen, or, I think we're getting too far beyond this. And I think my point is that, it's not like this can't be further amended down the road. It's this ethics product is a great effort by Commissioner Dunn. I agree. I'm just starting to think of all the things we could put into this, if that no more expensive than a cup of coffee. I just think we're going too far. Let's get the main facts done, and then let's come back later. Let's give this thing some time to roll through. That's my view. I don't agree with it.
Can I make some comments? Okay. We wrestled with this already. You didn't have the privilege of being in a workshop. I think it was our second workshop that we really wrestled with making certain that we deal with those items that would be that we did want to avoid in terms of, you see the language, in terms of any sort of gifts or compensation from any person, obviously any regulated utility, Certainly, it goes on by if we do receive anything of a value of more than $20, that's going to have to be disclosed. It's done on a quarterly basis. I think that's the disclosure. The concern I have here, and I cannot question the intent, but the concern I have are the terms they're using: regulated community and organization affiliated with regular community. That could be almost any aspect of almost any entity that we come across. And I was thinking, in terms of where I've gotten involved in NARUC, it would probably eliminate my involvement with the NARUC International Committee. And certainly the opportunity I had to do a foreign trip that was paid by NARUC to go to Argentina, working with young professionals down in that country who are struggling with renewable energy and things of that sort. I think it would also affect the fact that I was a panelist on a trade association. I think some of us have been invited to appear, and sometimes our expenses are covered, and we participate in the panel, we participate in a forum. They want to hear what's happening in Arizona. We want to hear what's happening in another jurisdiction. I have the privilege of being on a policy group sponsored by the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. They're involved in the area of in this general definition of organization affiliated with a regulated community, because on that panel are members of the industry along with commissioners. And I think I agree with Commissioner Tobin. I think it would be so difficult to try to figure out what would be permissible. Is that pen permissible? Is that piece of paper that I'm using? Is all being provided? But more importantly, these are opportunities, I think, that can expand our influence on a regional basis, expand our opportunity to learn more of what's happening in other jurisdictions. And why have the taxpayers of Arizona pay for it? You know, that's what's going to happen. I'm not going to quit these efforts. I'm just going to have the taxpayers here paying for it instead of having it paid by NARUC or through even the State Department or whatever, because I would be worried if that money had originated with the regulated community. I just think that's going to limit the opportunities you will have, yeah, Commissioner Olson, in terms of getting out there and getting involved in NARUC and getting involved in some of these committees. And I'll tell you, it's been just a rewarding experience for me in terms of understanding the industry better, understanding what we're doing well and what we're not doing well, so we can become better commissioners in the state of Arizona. So I appreciate the effort. I think I land where we landed previously in terms of feeling that we covered that base pretty well with the original language.
Commissioner Dunn, if I might, and I just want to say that, you know, I completely understand those comments and agree that there is a significant amount of public benefit that can occur from attending conferences and other meetings. And so I concede, like I mentioned previously, that there is no perfect rule for these scenarios. And so I certainly don't intend to imply with my amendment that some of the scenarios that were described were somehow improper, because that's certainly not the case. I do agree that there are public benefits that can occur from these meetings. Again, like I said, just the challenge of crafting something that again, I think it gets back to the point that you made earlier. Accountant and an attorney, you know, the accountant in me wants a clear, bright line test that's easy to know I've complied with. So that's what I come up with, but I completely understand the other perspectives.
I think with the biggest requirement here, again, is disclosure and transparency. And once we list those items, if we find that perhaps we're getting into areas that could create potential conflict interest, then I think that allows us as a group to perhaps say, you know, some of those things we're doing need to be railed in. But I think we wrestled with that during that workshop. I remember that discussion went on for some time in terms of we've got to cover this base, but let's not go beyond reason. Any other comments from the commission?
I would echo your concerns.
Okay. We'll ask for a roll call.
Commissioner Burns,
No.
Commissioner Olson,
Yes, aye.
Commissioner Tobin,
No.
Commissioner Dunn,
No.
Chairman Faris.
No.
Okay. This amendment fails 4-1. Or is not passed. That sounds better. Good idea. Every amendment here is a valid point of discussion. Also proposed amendment number 2 concerning Rule 4.3.
Number 3.
Oh, number 3, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the Olson proposed amendment number 3 be adopted, and same discussion as previously, so I'm sure we could just move to a vote.
And I have the same concerns, even more so, I think, in this area in terms of our activities and our ability to represent the ratepayer. Any other comments? Well, ask for the roll vote.
Commissioner Burns,
No.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner Tobin,
No.
Commissioner Dunn,
No.
Chairman Freeze.
No.
Okay, Olson, proposed amendment number 3 does not pass. Next item is involving Rule 4.5. It's a amendment that I am submitting concerning that rule, adding a new, let me see, it's a new rule. And this, I think we discussed last time, is simply a reflection of Arizona law where a commissioner, as all other employees, are not, shall not represent another person or entity before the commission for a period of 1 year following the date. I think I said done amendment 1. Okay. I'm sorry. Done amendment 1, involving Rule 4.5, that commissioner shall not, you can come by and waive, I guess, but don't participate or try to influence the commission for a period of 1 year after the commissioner leaves as a member of this body. And that just reflects Arizona law, specifically ARS section 38-504. There's other language about you can't be compensated or things of that sort. I didn't think that was relevant. I think it's just the fact of trying to potentially or have the appearance of trying to influence or lobbying this commission. Any discussion? Okay, we'll ask for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Burns,
Aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner Tobin,
Aye.
Commissioner Dunn,
Aye.
Chairman Freeze.
Aye.
Okay. Done proposed amendment passes 5-0. The next item is involving Rule 5.2 is Tobin's proposed amendment number 1. And
I
Commissioner
figured I'd
Tobin?
just ask you all to vote yes, so I don't have to describe it, if that's okay with you. Tobin's proposal, amendment number 1. You know, I think, I find this to be a simpler amendment than what it's all drawn out to be. I was just, when I first got to the commission, I was surprised to see that the legal community, the bar community, was not required to register. In fact, I'm not sure anybody was required to register to lobby the Corporation Commission. I sensed there was a big hole in the gap there. And I thought, well, why wouldn't we have the same registration requirements as that they do for the legislature, for sure? And to find out that, you know, there's a special accommodation, and I guess I could see that, for the legal community to not want to register if it has to do with their, specifically with their client, but as it relates to a case of sort. But when you're just coming down to the commission to lobby on an issue, I mean, I don't see that there's any reason to not include registration as part of the requirements. I mean, I think when it comes to, you know, visibility and transparency, I think most people would agree that if you had our good government affairs guy, Nick, who's got to register, and he's not a lawyer. You're not a lawyer, right, Nick? Yeah, Nick's not a lawyer, so he's not a lawyer, but he has to register if he's lobbying some commissioner or a commissioner's advisor. And but my cousin, who's a lawyer, just wouldn't have to. And I found that that was a major flaw and a major gap in our policy, and that was even before we decided to move forward on the on doing the ethics policy. I just figured this was something we could add. So I waited to this wonderful moment to go ahead and finally get this amendment in there and get it up for discussion. And I hope you would agree with me that it's time that we add this registration component.
Any
Commissioner
comments
Dunn?
from the commission?
Yeah,
Yes, Commissioner
if I could, and I don't have a problem with having the people registered as Mr. Tobin is proposing. However, it would seem to me that if there was some way to work with the Secretary of State, since they already have all the people in place and so forth to handle the registration, and in some cases, I don't know of any off the top of my head, but some cases I suspect maybe people that lobby at the legislature also sometimes may come to lobby at the commission. But if they were some way that the commission could work in cooperation with the Secretary of State and, let the Secretary of State handle the registration itself, but provide us with the information that they gather. Might be more efficient than setting up another registration process within the commission. Is just my point.
Commissioner, I did check with the State Bar. I think because of our nature of being a quasi-judicial process, it could be an issue of trying to determine if the attorney is representing his or her client in preparation of or on a case that's set for a hearing or just acting as a lobbyist. And my office spoke to the State Bar and to an ethics lawyer who said that this provision could create some issues under ER 1.6, which is a lawyer's duty of confidentiality. I think because of the nature of being the quasi-judicial, the bar interprets the privilege under the ethic rule 1.6 for attorneys to extend to the identity of the client. Lobbyist registration would require the lawyer to either violate their duty under ER 1.6 or force their client to waive privilege to exercise their free speech rights. That's my only concern, that we could create an item where attorneys would have to ask their clients to waive, to specifically sign a waiver in order to register. You say, Commissioner Tobin, that this does exist in the legislature for attorneys?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Dunn. I appreciate that. Yeah, if you're coming down to the legislative body, you're required to register as a lobbyist.
Yeah.
And whether you're a lawyer or not. And I recognize that there's not a judicial component there, but that's why this is written, so that in the course of a contested proceeding or on behalf of a client who is not a party to the contest would not be included. So the matters relate only to contested proceedings. And I think we drafted it right. So we're talking about someone who comes down and advocates for a policy position. That's what we're talking about here. And I think the public wants to know who those people are. I mean, I guess you could argue you could go to lunch with someone who's a lawyer, and they could be representing somebody and advocating. And you know what? You don't even know that they're the advocate. You don't know they're lobbying, and so they wouldn't have to even file. I would imagine that they even took you to lunch or bought your cup of coffee or a pen. So I just think it's bigger than that. I think that somehow or another we need to have a standard that says if you're advocating for a position, and you're advocating whether you're at the legislature or at the Corporation Commission, you should be registered.
Yes, Commissioner Freeze.
Commissioner Tobin, we touched on this in the last Code of Ethics hearing, and I agree with you. What I can't figure out, and I fear that this is going to require more time for us to have some clarity here is that there is a judicial aspect of the commission and a legislative aspect of the commission. And in the judicial frame, I believe there are times when an attorney would fall under what Commissioner Dunn had described and could be violating attorney-client. In the legislative frame, in terms of lobbying, that has far less to do with the whether or not it's a regulated entity, but what we want to do is create transparency so the public can see if XYZ Corporation is coming down and lobbying commissioners or staff on something, then you should be able to find those that are representing company XYZ, and there should be complete transparency on that. I want this, and I just don't know how we do that, and I don't know how we do that tonight on the fly. It seems like that might be something to continue through the docket to work out specifics. I think everybody that comes before the commission should just register with the Secretary of State as a lobbyist coming before the commission. But how we bifurcate judicial versus legislative, I don't have an answer tonight on that.
Well, thank you for that, Commissioner Chairman Freese. I will share with you that this amendment is worded to specifically separate judicial from legislative. So I think at the end of the day, you'll find that this amendment was carefully written to make sure that we are not stepping over the line. And to the extent that I think folks are worried about their oath at the bar, I think that clear oath would be to be able to disclose that, and I don't see that we can't find a way around it from that point. But for not putting this in there, to have, and there are many lawyers, many members of the bars who don't practice in court, but are lobbyists and are advocates, and many of them might have been in our audience or still are today. So I just think that the major flaw that I think without requiring registration, I think it leaves a wide open hole in our effort here on moving forward with an ethics policy. It takes a specific group who because they are past the bar and now are a member of the bar, have a what I would say an advantage over others. And I disagree with it.
Agreed. And I could vote for this tonight, but I think that it's soft and it can be gamed. And that's my biggest concern is I think it's too gray to where those that attorneys could claim one thing is judicial rather than legislative. And I don't think that's the part of it that actually I think has to be more defined, but I could support this tonight.
Well,
Thank you.
Let me ask
Thank you.
legal counsel, in terms of any thoughts you may have.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I recall Commissioner Tobin's remarks at a prior workshop regarding this lobbyist issue, and that's really what prompted, that was the intent in how we drafted this. So the term any person was specifically used to encompass whether you're a mechanic, a lawyer, a sailor, whoever it is. It's not what hat you wear, it's the substance of the conversations that you're having with the commissioner. So in my opinion, a lawyer who is also a lobbyist would already be encompassed under the existing rule and would be required to register if those conversations with the commissioner don't relate to a proceeding at an open meeting or a rate case or things like that.
And I don't necessarily disagree with this. I I think on a higher level, I know we've had discussion whether we want to have registration or not, whether that registration should be done in the Secretary of State's office or here. I think I'm hearing here that the Commission still wants to create our own registration process. The only concern I have, and I'd probably encourage the Commission to perhaps have this looked at. Maybe, Andy, you could contact the State Bar and see how serious they're indicating a concern that create an ethical consideration. They may not understand how we operate or how we're going. They haven't seen the main text of the code. I just don't want to find out afterwards that we have some issue. I think what we need to make certain is that it's clear that if an attorney is here acting in a quasi-judicial matter or representing their client in a case that's set for hearing or may go to hearing, I think there has to be a separate path from that person that happens to be an attorney but is a lobbyist and has a degree. If you recall, we looked at other codes. Even the city of Phoenix excludes attorneys if they're involved in any quasi-judicial process or even a zoning case. They don't have to register in the city of Phoenix, and I think it's the same concern. So I think this may be worth a look and something we can bring back at a later date just to make certain that we don't necessarily go down the wrong path. We just haven't had a chance to vet this as fully as we should. That's my feeling. So Commissioner Tobin, would you mind if this stays on the docket but could be looked at and we could check with the State Bar to see if it's really a concern?
Yeah, I don't want to force my fellow commissioners to vote no on something like this or force them to vote yes when they don't feel good about it. If you think there's still time to make it an adjustment, or we can make this work, I'm happy to try to work it out. But okay. I think what we're going to do is you're going to ask me to vote on this ethics document tonight when we're all done amending, and I'm going to vote yes. But keep in mind, I'm going to vote to pass an ethics thing without the key component that I think helped start this process, even before you arrived, Commissioner Dunn. So, but I don't want to put my fellow commissioners on, put them out without having the information to vote on. But you can appreciate why I'm nervous about passing a ethics policy without having that recorded. Having those people register.
Let me ask counsel. Do you see any problem?
I'll hold it if that's what my fellow commissioners prefer. I'll hold it.
If we approve this code of ethics with the understanding that this is an item that can be brought back later to amend the code, that can certainly be done after a proper vetting by your office.
Mr. Chairman, members, absolutely.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just one other item. I think I brought it up at the workshop as well, but it sounds like this is something that Commissioner Tobin is very interested in. I just bring up the idea. To me, it seems like it would work really well to just put it into statute. I know it requires us communicating with folks over at the legislature, but it seems to me like that wouldn't be controversial and it's something that the legislature might adopt. But since the requirement to register with the Secretary of State to lobby the legislature is already in statute, it seems like that might be a streamlined, straightforward process. Maybe there's some bill moving through the legislature that we could amend that onto and just add that requirement on that if they're lobbying the commission, then they have to register through that same process. So just something to bring up.
Okay, it could be. I have to look at too. Okay, we'll put that in the back burner. The next item is involving actually 4 amendments that deals with political contributions on Rule 5.4. Commission, I would probably recommend having a discussion on all 4 before a vote occurs so we can look at the differences and consider them, because it'd be tough to put them in any specific order, and I'm just doing them in order that they came in. It's Commissioner Burns proposed amendment number 3, and then I think an amended number 3. Is
well,
that
an
correct?
alternate number 3, yeah.
Okay, I have 2 number 3s. Is that
Right,
correct?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there is Commissioner Olson has his amendment number 1, and then I have an amendment number 2. As you'll see in hearing this, there's two basic different approaches of how to deal with this item. One deals with the political contributions themselves, and a couple deals with the fact of disclosing any contributions that any commissioner may have received at the time of the hearing to allow the consideration of recusal. I call that kind of the judicial approach, because that's how it's done within the court. But there are two that deals with political contributions. So, Commissioner Burns, you want to discuss your two amendments and indicate the different approaches there?
Yeah, okay, thank you, Commissioner Dunn. The first one would be to require the commissioner to recuse themselves if they received a contribution from someone who was appearing in front of the commission, would include family and possibly charities that they might be interested in and so forth. And then it sets a limit in the aggregate of $1,000 for the employees in executive positions that might be contributing, and then sets a limit at $100 in the aggregate if this individuals. That's the first one. I mean, it's, I think, pretty straightforward. It's, you receive a contribution, you would be required to recuse yourself if that party came before the commission. And do you want me to talk about the second one?
Okay.
The second one is similar, with the exception that instead of recusal, it would be a declaration that would be made in the docket, and a declaration made at the time a vote might be taken. Still have the $1,000 limit, the $100 limit.
Okay, before we move them, Commissioner Olson, you want to discuss yours?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the key difference between mine and Commissioner Burns' first amendment number 3, not the alternate, is that Commissioner Burns' proposed amendment number 3 includes independent expenditures. And so I offered this as kind of a backup alternative if the Commissioner Burns' amendment number 3 doesn't pass because of concerns about the independent expenditures and the constitutionality of the amendment. Then this would get at the rest of the contributions. So this would get at direct contributions to a candidate. If a commissioner receives contributions from, well, it just says the commissioner shall not accept contributions from an owner or officer, which would include executive officers, in my understanding, includes executive employees of the corporation. So they shall not receive those. In the event that a commissioner does unknowingly receive a campaign contribution, they shall refund the contribution. If that's not possible, then the commissioner shall recuse himself or herself from participating and voting on that matter. So largely the same approach. Again, the reason I offered this is as an alternative if the Burns amendment number 3 doesn't pass because of those concerns about the independent expenditures. And you know, I can describe what those concerns are, but I think perhaps we'll have a discussion later. But that's the explanation of my amendment.
Okay, let me explain mine. Then we'll go back and move each one and have more specific discussion as to our concerns. I took the approach of the alternative proposal by Commissioner Burns, and I did take out the independent expenditures for a couple of reasons. But this is this is as close as to the judicial way of handling this as judges do, in terms of stating to the parties in a hearing whether any direct contributions have been received, and make certain that the parties are understanding that, to allow the parties to indicate any concerns they have about your ability to participate as a voting commissioner, very similar to what a judge would do on the bench. But the recusal would occur, would be the decision of that individual. As you know, we talked about the issue that we have with the doctrine of necessity. We have only 5 members up here, while a Superior Court has 99 members. And so it can be, we have to understand that if you're forced to recuse yourself, we could be in a situation where we would not be able to carry out our constitutional responsibilities. So the recusal stays with that individual. That's also the case in Commissioner Burns. But again, it deals with direct contributions. It deals with contributions from anyone. It doesn't necessarily limit itself to public service corporations. I think there could be, this would include obviously contributions that come from those entities that are not regulated by this commission. So I think those are just as important to understand and to state publicly. So again, staying true to the transparency provisions that exist in the code. Okay, so kind of two different approaches, but different elements. Why don't we start with Commissioner Burns' proposed amendment number 3, not the alternate. If you wish to discuss that further or to make a motion.
Okay, let me go ahead and make a motion, and then if there's any questions, I guess, because of it's basically a contribution received would require recusal. So I would move Commissioner Burns' proposed amendment number 3.
Okay, any discussions on that? Quickly, from my perspective, I think we discussed this last workshop. I appreciate this effort. There are 3 areas I have a concern with. Is one, in the fact that a commissioner shall recuse himself or herself, especially with the involvement of the payment of indirect contributions. I think that would, number one, be perhaps a difficulty to be able to refund those. Number 2, it is something that the commissioner was not involved with, and obviously it was something out of that person's control. I think we talked about the danger of perhaps whoever's making the independent expenditure to try to control who would be disqualified, because if made at these amounts, and if the commissioner was unable to pay back because of the nature of being an expenditure or the amount, then they've achieved almost the opportunity to choose the commissioners they may want to rule in the case. I think it just has that danger. And then perhaps the only other concern I have is with the issue of a charity. I do not intend to. I don't think I need to disclose what my charities are. I don't care what the charities are of any person who gives me a campaign contribution, but I'm not going to disclose my charitable giving. I think that's going too far from that responsibility. Those are my concerns with that amendment. Any other discussions? Okay, call for the vote.
Commissioner Burns,
Aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Mr. Chairman, explaining my vote.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Burns, for bringing this amendment forward. Similar to the other issue that I drafted some amendments on, I've struggled with this one as well to come up with what I think is a policy that gets at the issue and is workable. That's the challenge that I have with this scenario. I fear that the amendment here can be challenged on constitutional grounds under Citizens United because it could create a chilling effect and limit that constitutionally protected speech under Citizens United. I've heard some arguments that perhaps there is benefit in testing whether Citizens United should apply when a contribution is from a regulated entity for the election of the regulator. I think that's an interesting idea. I think that it perhaps has merit. Because of that concern about the constitutional question, I have brought forward this other amendment. At this time, I am going to vote aye for this bill. For this amendment to the Code of Ethics. with the understanding that there could be a challenge and this could be struck down under constitutional grounds. And if that's the case, then we ought to defer back to a different approach that I've laid out in this other amendment. And with that, I vote aye.
Commissioner Tobin,
No.
Commissioner Dunn,
No,
Chairman Faris,
No.
this amendment does not pass on a vote of 4-1. Burns proposed amendment number 3. Burns proposed alternate amendment.
3-2 vote, I think.
Did I say that wrong? What did I say wrong?
You gave me a 4-1. I think I had a 3-2.
3-2, I'm sorry. 3-2. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, I know.
Okay, you want me to go ahead with the alternate?
Yeah, please do.
The
I'm speaking.
alternate, okay, the alternate is very similar to the one just voted on. However, instead of recusal, it requires declaration in the dockets and at the time of the vote in the open meeting.
Okay, discussion? If I may, a few concerns I have. Thank you, Commissioner Burns, for this alternate. There's certain aspects of it I am concerned with. One is the indirect payment of indirect expenditures. I think it creates the same concern, especially it's not going to be a knowing item of the commissioner, at least not the commissioner's involvement. I keep on, and maybe that's my problem, I keep on thinking of scenarios that could cause an issue. In this one, what if there was a negative expenditure toward an opponent of yours that could be viewed as a benefit that would require me to recuse myself if I feel that benefited me in that way. And then I think the problem comes into the fact that if there's an independent expenditure, let's say from the Chamber of Commerce, and you know, I have to declare who perhaps gave that contribution. I may not be able to determine that, just because the independent expenditure nature. With the current law, we just don't have the ability to be able to identify if that came from a particular party that's before us. So it could create a gray area of how I would handle that scenario. So I think with those concerns, it'd be difficult for me to support this amendment.
Chairman Faris.
No.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I thought we were in a vote. I'm sorry.
No, any other comments? I was just, we'll call for roll call vote, please. I don't know.
Jumping the gun.
Yeah, you pushed me along. I appreciate that. It was pushing me along.
No hint there.
No.
Are you ready?
Oh, I gotta get rid of this. Yes,
Ready.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Yes.
Commissioner Burns,
Aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner Tobin,
No.
Commissioner Dunn,
No?
Chairman Faris.
No.
Okay. The amendment fails to pass on a vote of 3-2. Okay, Olson, amendment number 1. Commissioner Olson, if you wish to make a motion on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the revised Olson proposed amendment number 1 to agenda item number 24 be adopted. I've already discussed it, so.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll wait for the chairman to come back. So how are things